Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. In today's video we'll be taking a look at the 2024 presidential election, but doing it in a unique way through the famous 13 keys model developed by Professor Alan Lichtman, who has been predicting, as it says here, presidential elections dating back to 1984, and he's actually, it says, gotten every election right, even 2016, which most people did not. And his system is what I have on your screen. It's the 13 keys, and you fill it out, and you see if 8 of the 13 are true, it means that the incumbent, in this case Joe Biden, will win. And if 6 or more are false, Donald Trump will win. So we'll be taking a look at this model. Obviously, Alan Lichtman will release his own responses to this forecast, or his own responses to the questions, but I'll be doing mine. And so because these questions are ambiguous, there will be some where I disagree with Lichtman, some where I agree with Lichtman. But either way, I want to talk about what I would do if I were filling out this chart, true or false. So the first one is one where I already disagree with Alan Lichtman. So this one, midterm gains, it's defined as the incumbent party holds more seats in the House of Representatives than they did the previous midterm. And this one is obviously false because obviously Republicans did gain seats last November. However, I'm going to put it in the true column. And I say that because I think context is important. I'm a big believer in not blindly following history or following rules that don't make sense. And so, for example, let's honestly talk about the 2022 midterms. They were very bad for Republicans, and they gained seats in the House, but realistically it wasn't. They netted 9 because they were at 213 before. Now they're at 222. And since they netted 9, that's Democrats netted 40 in 2018. Republicans netted 20-something in 2014, but they already had a massive majority, so it didn't really matter. In 2010, when Republicans took back the majority in the first place, they netted 60. So, obviously, 9 seats compared to 40 or 60, not very impressive. And I would argue that the midterms actually were a pretty good showing for Joe Biden. So, for that reason, you can argue with the definition, and while technically this would be a false key, I'm going to put it true because I think context is more important. Now, no primary contest. This is also in the true column. It's obviously defined here as the incumbent party nominee wins at least 2/3 of the total delegate on the first ballot, which will very likely happen. And Lichtman said that this one's true, so I don't really have too much of a problem contesting that one. Incumbent seeking re-election, that's another one. Obviously, that is 1,000% true. Joe Biden is running for re-election. That is a free key for Democrats, as it often is for the incumbent party. No third party. This one's ambiguous because you could say, well, look, Cornel West is running. Obviously, Democrats are not happy about that. He will likely take away more votes from Biden than he will from Trump. And if Cornel West does gain traction, I think that's a really big problem for the Democratic Party. But this key is defined as a party is likely to win more than 5%, which I don't think Cornel West is. So for that reason, we'll put it in the likely true column. So Joe Biden out to a very strong early lead here. Now, this is where it gets tricky. A lot of these are very ambiguous. So key 5, strong short-term economy. And this is one that on the surface is pretty good for Biden because it just says the economy is not in recession during the election campaign, which it is not. Obviously, I'm no economist. I cannot make predictions for where the economy will be a year from now. But it's not likely we'll be in a recession. I'll tell you that. We've seen growth in consecutive quarters, which usually indicates there will not be a recession. So as of right now, there's no recession. But here's the problem for Joe Biden. The majority of voters do not think the economy is strong. In fact, there was a survey came out, I think it was from CBS or NBC or some major news outlet. They polled the country, and it turns out that the majority of Americans disapprove of Biden on the economy. They think Trump would do a better job. And they asked voters what comes to mind when they say Bidenomics. More people said high taxes and inflation than job creation, which is obviously a very big problem for Joe Biden because he can have the greatest economy in the world. He can have an economy the best in history. And if the majority of voters don't think he's doing a good job, it doesn't matter. So obviously, I like this 13 keys model. I think it's a really good way to predict an election, just to kind of do it, based on vibes. But if the majority of voters think that the economy is bad, they're not going to vote for Joe Biden, even if the economy is good. So for that reason, I'm going to put it in the lean false column. Obviously, that one is difficult. I think you can make an argument for either side, but right now, I think public opinion matters more than what's actually happening. And for that reason, strong short-term economy will be in the false column. Strong long-term economy. Real GDP per capita economic growth during the term equals or exceeds mean growth during the previous two terms. So, obviously, I don't have the figures memorized. Like I said, I'm not an economist. I'm just a guy who predicts elections on YouTube. But what I will say is that if you look at the per capita economic growth when you don't adjust it for inflation, I'm pretty sure it's pretty good for Joe Biden, especially compared to the latter end of Trump's term because of COVID. And obviously, Trump lost jobs, and thus the average annual income of Americans declined, I believe, in the final year and a half of his term. But what I will say is that, again, public perception matters more than what's actually going on here. So for the same reason I gave key 5 to the false team, I'm going to give key 6. The majority of Americans don't think the economy is going to be good long term, and that's going to hurt Biden. So for similar reasons, key 6 I'm going to put in the false category. Key 7, major policy change. This one, again, you can make an argument for it, but Biden does have a good amount of legislation to tout, whether that be the American Rescue Plan, the Respect for Marriage Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS Act. He has, whether you agree with it or not, whether you think it's a good thing for the country, Biden has things he can tout. He's had a lot of executive orders that have rolled back what Trump did during his term. So there has been major policy change under Joe Biden. He's been a very different president than Donald Trump, and I think the majority of Americans will acknowledge that. So obviously, I don't know whether that's good or not for Joe Biden, but it is true. So that's 5-2 lead for the true side. No social unrest. Again, this one's ambiguous, kind of like the earlier ones. You could definitely make the argument that there is social unrest, but as defined here, this key is only false if there is widespread violent unrest that is either sustained or leaves critical issues unresolved by the time of the election. So we do not have widespread violence. We do not, really have any super strong sentiment that would indicate we do have this. So I'll put in the likely true column. Again, could that change between now and November 2024? Maybe, probably not though. No scandal. This one, obviously, there are a lot of minor things Republicans are calling out related to the Biden administration, regardless of whether you think those are legitimate or not. This key requires bipartisan recognition of serious impropriety, and we do not have that yet. We have kind of half the Republicans saying it and no Democrats, so that's going to be in the likely true column. So again, Biden's one key away from winning here. He needs 8. So we're going to see. No, now this one's another hard one. No foreign or military failure. Now this one is one that I disagree with Alan Lichtman on. He says this is true. He says no, there's no foreign or military failure, and I'm going to disagree with that. I think this one's going to go in the lean false column, and I say that because when you ask the average American what their thoughts are on Biden's administration's actions regarding the military, I think the number one thing that comes to mind for America specifically, not worldwide, for America, is the Afghanistan withdrawal, which, as we know, was very unpopular. The majority of Americans said Biden botched it, and for that reason, I'm going to say perception matters. You can talk about the optics of, you can talk about Joe Biden, his decision to pull out of Afghanistan. Regardless, I'm going to say this is in the lean false column because there has, in the majority of Americans' eyes, been a military failure, and as a result of that, we're going to narrowly put this in the false column. Now, I think this is the hardest one. Major foreign/military success. And this is defined as the incumbent administration achieves a major success in foreign or military affairs. And according to this website, Lichtman has so far implied this key is likely true. He said, the response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine is quite likely a foreign policy success, but the situation in Ukraine hasn't fully played out yet, and it could turn negatively. I hope not, but that's certainly possible, so I'm holding judgment. So that, to me, is one way to interpret it. The way I would interpret it is, again, what the majority of Americans think. And I would say this key is definitely better for Biden than key 10, but the problem that Biden has is that I don't know if the majority of Americans approve of the way he's handling it. The majority of Americans believe Ukraine should be given weapons, the Ukraine should be given funds, the Ukraine should be obviously favored to defeat Russia, in Russia's unjustified, unprovoked invasion, by the way. But I don't know whether the majority of Americans approve of what Joe Biden's done. So we're going to go with Lichtman. We're going to say it is in the major foreign military. We're going to say this is true. But this one's really hard for me because I don't know what the average. We don't have polling on this. We have polling on Afghanistan. We have polling on the economy. We have polling on head-to-head matchups or whatnot. We don't have polling on what the average American thinks recently of Biden's handling of Ukraine. So for that reason, we're going to say it is in the lean true column just because of what Lichtman said, but I'm pretty cautious on that one. Now, these last two are going to be good for Trump. Obviously, Biden has one. He's at 8 keys, but we're going to give these last two to Trump. I would say Donald Trump. So first of all, Joe Biden is not charismatic. You can think he's a good president. You can plan on voting for him. You can plan on supporting him. That's cool, but he's not charismatic. And I think this is pretty objectively true. And I say that because he is not a good debater. He doesn't have a super strong base the way Trump does. And on top of that, he's old. He's not a great public speaker to begin with, but he'll be 80 when he's out there debating Trump next year and when he's giving these speeches and rallies. So I would say regardless what you think of him as a president, he's pretty clearly not charismatic. And Trump, on the other hand, I think is. Trump obviously has his drawbacks as a person when you talk to the average American, but he's pretty charismatic. He can captivate a crowd. He has a really big base that likes him a lot, and I think it's hard to see how you wouldn't put that one in the false column. But regardless, Joe Biden is at a lead here of 8-5, and that means that he, per this model, will be reelected president. So that is where I would stand if I was filling out these 13 keys. I know Al Lichtman, I think, would be a bit more favorable to Joe Biden. Obviously, it appears lower on Joe Biden than Al Lichtman is, but regardless, that's what I think. Thank you so much for watching this video. Again, if you enjoy, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you have not already. I'll see you all in the next one.